Shalom Aleichem and welcome to Machan Leira Online Smicha. One of the very interesting halachas, and it's not difficult, but it's geschmack, is the halachas of Tvilas Kelim. And I want to spend a couple of minutes just discussing some of the issues, practical issues, that you have to know when you deal with the halachas of Tvilas Kelim. Especially when it comes before Pesach, everybody's buying new Kelim, Pesach dishes, or wedding dishes, or whatever it is. Now, if you go to a Yiddish store, and you're buying dishes, if you're not buying from Target, a goyish place, if you're buying from a Yiddish store, the first question comes up, you're buying a dish from a Yid. The Yid, you don't have to table a keli unless it's from a goy, because you want to be mile, it's from the kedusha, from the tumah of a goy, and it gets elevated into kedushas Yisrael. So obviously, at that part, the Yid is still only the middleman because he is using this to sell. The fact that the storekeeper is selling the item also creates something you have to think about. What happens if somebody, a Jewish hardware store that has Kalim, that's what he does for a living, he's trying to cut the chase, he's trying to minimize the line of before Pesach, and he knows there's a certain item that's going to sell very good, and there's going to be a lot of people by the mikveh lining up in the back by the mikveh. So you know what he does? He says, let me take this whole stack of kalim and put them all in the mikveh. I'll do it, so when the people come and whoever buys will have a ready-made kalim. What's the problem? The problem is that you did the tvila b'kalim, you did the mitzvah, quote-unquote, of toveling the keli before the keli was obligated. Why? When the keli is a keli ha'omed l'scheret, the Shulchan Aruch says only a keli which is used for food during the Suda. A keli which is not used for meals, you don't have to put in a mikveh. It only becomes a mechuyev mikveh when it's a keli that you bought to use as a meal, for part of the meal. So before you use it part of the meal, you have to put it in the mikveh. So much so, listen to this, there is a discussion in the Achrayim. If you go to a restaurant, does the person who owns the restaurant, does he have to table the kalim that he gives you, he serves you? Why? Because even if he bought the kalim from Target or whatever, you see the high-end kalim, even if he bought the kalim from some goyish company, but he bought the kalim not for eating, he bought the kalim to serve, to make money as part of a restaurant, as part of what a restaurant services. That's a keli ha'omed l'schayra. A keli ha'omed l'schayra is not mechuyev b'tevila. Just to show you, I'm not saying that that's what we're passing, but there's a long discussion about this. If a person owning a restaurant, that it's not made for people, it's not made like a home keli, where a person uses the keli to feed himself or cook, there's a discussion it's mechuyev b'tevila. So go back to the original shaila, a guy who's selling kelim, and at that time it's not yet mechuyev b'tevila. To put them all in the mikveh in advance is a discussion. It's a discussion, and in many poskim have a long ba'arichus about this. Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach discusses this. Reb Moshe Feinstein, and it also has a connection to another part. What's the connection to another part? There are kelim that seem to be used primarily a one-time usage. A can of tuna, a can of Coke, a bottle of, you could take the pickle jars that you buy, plastic or whatever the pickle jars or cans they are, most people use it for a one-time usage. But what happens if a person wants to take that bottle or can and wash it out and keep on using it? So now you have to be smart. If you're using it just to store food, it's much easier, less of a problem. If you're going to use this now to cook food and eat food out of it, that's a difficulty. So Rav Moshe has a tshuva. Rav Moshe in Igros Moshe Yeridei Chelik Beis Simon Mem, he writes that the kelim that are sold, soda bottles and all these things, if the person wants to use it long term, he still doesn't need tevila. Why? Because since the keli, as it came to you, when the keli came to you, it was sold as an item that's a throwaway item. It didn't have the shame of a keli. So therefore, when the Yid makes it, I want to use it as a permanent thing, a Yiddish keli is not mechuyev b'tevila. So that's the loophole. So there's a very interesting discussion if you're allowed to put in the mikveh a keli when it's not yet obligated. All right, so we settled that issue. So now it's a very big madrash. Everybody's shopping at the same time, so they want some help, helping the women, helping the people buying the kelim to dunk the kelim into the mikveh. Who could be that help? So the Shulchan Aruch in Yeridei Siman Kuf Chav says, "Ein ma'aminim katan al tvilas kelim." A little kid on the bar mitzvah, if he says he did it, you can't trust him. A katan is not trusted in the chashash yisur d'oraisa, and tvilas kelim is not min haTorah. But if the katan does it while a gadol is watching, then the manas, the trust of a katan, we don't trust him. But the action of a katan, to see if he did it right while somebody else is watching, that is fine. Now, to ask Billy, the guy who works in the store, the guy, stand by the mikveh, and any woman that gives you put the keli in the mikveh, is a guy allowed to do it? So in Shulchan Aruch, again, in Siman Kuf Chav Sif Tesvav says, Im hitvil kelim al yidei oiv kechavim, also lem tvila. If a guy did it, the tvila is good. But there's a loophole here. Once you put in the mikveh, as long as you're already paid for the keli and it's yours, then you could put it in the mikveh because it's not anymore the owner's, it's mechuyev b'tvila, fine. So as long as it got into the mikveh, it got the job done, but you ruined something. You know what you ruined? The goy can't make the bracha because a goy is not mechuyev b'mitzvahs. And by giving it over to a goy to do it, it's problematic because you could only make a bracha when a shliach of yours does the mitzvah for you. But if the goy is your shliach, you ain't shlichus alacha. You can't make a goy a shliach. So obviously it's preferable that the goy shouldn't do it. So you should be able to make a bracha, and with this you purify everything that has to be clean.